thoughts. The evening of January 31st, 2020. Can't believe how time flies. Well, the other day I was watching my son play, and one fun thing we like to do is wash the car. And it just struck me that he is the same age now as I was when I had my first experiences that I still remember today. My first memories were of his age, and that was of Christmas of the year 1969. Although my conversation I had with my brother might have been later on, perhaps February of 1970, after Christmas. But it was about a street light that was outside our house. And I remember the bunk bed. I remember where the room was, where the bed was in the room of the house. And I even remembered the house. I found it on Google Street Maps. And I remember looking out the window, and there was a street light. And I was asking my brother if that was the Star of Bethlehem. And he was saying, no, it's just a street light. I was 3 years old and 4, perhaps 5 or 6 months. And my brother would have been 7, almost 8. So that's Charlie's age. It just struck me that some of these experiences that he has here in our house might be experiences that he'll remember for the rest of his life. And that just kind of struck me because he could very well live. He'd be 83 in the year 2100. And he'll certainly get very close to that. But it's like time travel, you know. So the experiences that we have, the things that I teach him, are things that he might well carry. It's an interesting road, you know, that we go down in life sometimes. So while we're outside sometimes, I get reminded of these stories, and I wanted to share some of these stories with you. So my son likes to, as I said, wash the car, and sometimes in the mornings I'll try to stay a good distance away from the hose, and I'll stand underneath a papaya tree. And that kind of gives me pause because I have a papaya story. I grew up in Kansas City, in the middle of the United States, and I never heard of papaya in my life. I'd never seen an avocado. I'd never seen a papaya. I didn't know what those fruits were. I didn't know what mango was. I had to learn about that after moving to Texas in 1993. So in 1994, I had a part-time job for a while, or I had a full-time job for a while, reading electrical meters and going around these neighborhoods, these rural areas of Texas. And there's a lot of Hispanics there, a lot of people that are used to be Mexican, and the border changed, and suddenly they were in the U.S., and they just kept their culture and their language and everything. It's a Spanish-speaking part of the U.S. And this Mexican man, this Hispanic man, sees me coming to read the meters, and he cuts a papaya off of his little papaya tree and gives it to me. And I had never been given any kind of gratuity, any kind of gift from anyone in my life, unless it was your birthday or something, you know. So I was really taken aback. I didn't know what to do, you know. I didn't know what to expect. And it was this big football-like thing, you know. And so I took it home and ate it, you know. And really interesting. And every time I eat papaya, that memory comes back to me. Well, another tree that we have there in my yard, and I think about when my son is out there playing, is a juniper. And the juniper we have is this big round green lump, and it's fun. I always smile when I look at that juniper tree because my father planted a juniper tree in our front yard in the 1970s, and he thought that it would grow to be this beautiful Christmas tree. And it would have this really nice Christmas tree shape, and he could decorate it, you know. And it just grew into this big green lump. It didn't have any kind of Christmas tree shape at all. And it was just this odd looking thing. And I still remember that. My father's a little bit disappointed about that tree. Another one of my father's ideas that he thought was a great idea turned out to be this farce. You know, this is this comedy. And so much of his life was like that, and he'd get so frustrated. But, you know, sometimes in life you just have to laugh, you know? And I got him to laugh about that later on in life. Another memory I have of juniper I like to do is tear off the leaves and smell them. And when I would go hunting in Missouri, in order to cover your scent, because deer are really very, very sensitive to smell, as well as turkey, other animals that you'd hunt. What we'd do is we'd cut juniper branches and we'd put them in a big plastic trash bag, and we'd throw our clothes in there, even socks, shoes, everything. Everything you're going to wear when you go hunting goes in the bag. And you tie the bag shut, and you let it sit for several days, and you let the smell of those juniper branches permeate your clothes. And that smell, you know, it masks your human odor, and it always seems to really work really well. And so I think about that whenever I see the juniper tree. And my last juniper story is one time when I was hunting. I always remember this because now I'm married and I have children. But for a long time, many, many years of my life, I was alone, very alone. And one story I have that's really sad, I was reminded of it many times for many years when I was living on my own. I was in the woods hunting, and I went hunting early in the morning. It was hunting season, and it had rained the night before, and it was a freezing rain. And I knew no one's going to be out. I'm just going to go. I'm going to go with my gun and take a look and see what I can see. I can't remember if I was hunting squirrel or rabbit or deer or what. I think it was squirrel or rabbit. But I went out in the woods, and this is back in the 1990s, before anybody had cell phones. I've always had a really good camera, but I didn't have it with me, of course. I'm just hunting. And I'm walking through this hunting land, this public land that they have, these state parks that you can hunt in. And I'm walking through, and I stumble upon this clearing. And this clearing is full of small juniper trees, maybe 7 feet, maybe less than 2 meters would be the tallest one. Most of them are maybe 1.5 meters. All these little small juniper trees. Juniper has these small berries. They use the berries to flavor gin. That flavor of gin is juniper. And birds eat it, and you know, when they fly over, they drop the seed. So there's this small little grove of all these juniper trees, and all of them have these frozen raindrops on them, and these frozen raindrops look like small icicles, maybe 2, 3, 4 centimeters in length. These frozen little sticks all over them, and it's super beautiful. It looks like crystal decorated Christmas trees with little crystal sticks, glass sticks, all over these beautiful little Christmas trees. And it was so beautiful, I was just struck. I just stood there, just admiring it. And if I remember right, I even sat for a while and just absorbed it. And there's no way for me to share it. I had no camera. If I go home and get somebody, you know, if I try to get somebody and bring them back, by the time I come back, it's going to be late morning, early afternoon, and the sun's going to melt everything. These are going to melt in just a couple of hours. And so I just had to enjoy it by myself. And there's been several experiences I've had like that. When I went to Cartagena, watching the boat traffic go in and out of the port of Cartagena in the country of Colombia, I watched that for hours by myself. And that was super beautiful. You could hear the foghorns of the ships as they entered and left the harbor. The lights of the city, absolutely beautiful. It really reminds me of the Manila skyline along Rojas Boulevard, the way it curves. Cartagena goes out into the Caribbean like that, curves. But it's very beautiful, and it's something I had to enjoy by myself. And so I think of that whenever I see juniper trees. It's interesting, the paths that life leads you. Another memory I have is calamansi. My first experience with calamansi tree, I'd never heard of it before. I met uh, a Filipina, and we went to her aunt's house. And her aunt actually was here in the Philippines just last week, but she wasn't able to stop by and visit with me. But her mother is sick, and so it's difficult, to go around and visit everybody. But we went to her house and helped her move, and she had this huge calamansi tree beside her garage. And there were all these little calamansi seedlings that had sprouted, and maybe 7 I spotted. And so I dug one up and asked her if I could keep it. She said, yeah, and I put it in a little plastic cup that I had rolling around in my car. And right now, as a matter of fact, I just realized, just thinking about it, I have another empty cup rolling around in my car from Starbucks. Anyway, I plopped it in there, and I planted it when I came home, and I've always had a calamansi tree. When I sold my house, I had no calamansi for maybe, 5 months or something. And then I moved here, and I've got a calamansi tree in my house here and another one in this little park across the street. And I've always had calamansi now. It's really interesting. I love calamansi with Pepsi, with beer, with food. If you cut up calamansi and you roast it on top of a fish fillet, the oven will turn the calamansi sweet, but it's got to be orange. It can't be a fully green calamansi. Coconut trees. My son likes to say conacut, but he's already correcting himself now, so that's disappearing. But it was so cute I didn't want to correct him. Conacut. But coconut trees, I've got another story about. I remember my first trip to the Philippines in 2004. I was sleeping at a house in Batangas, and the sun was setting, and I saw a coconut tree, the silhouette of a coconut tree behind the setting sun. I was a little bit distant, and there was something waving behind the coconut tree. And I asked my wife what that was, and she said, "Oh, that's bamboo." And I was just struck by the fact that bamboo can grow so much taller than a coconut tree. Really interesting. That was my first experience of the Philippines. Had some of the most beautiful experiences of my life on that trip. A river in Batangas that was really like a stream, I suppose. Very noisy, not a lot of volume of water flowing over some rocks. And on the other side of the river, the stream, there was a forest, uncut. And you could hear monkeys jumping in the forest. And they sounded, to an American, they sound exactly like seagulls. Those pesky gulls that fly around you trying to steal your food, your french fries, while you're walking along the beach in the U.S. The gulls are everywhere. And the cry that they make, it sounds exactly like these monkeys in Batangas. Well, these are just some thoughts. Some thoughts. things that the road of life has led me down, you know. Just wanted to share. Hope you're having a good day.